We always are. And
We always are?
just about.
Is this the Truman Show?
I think I forgot about that movie. That was what, Jim Carrey?
It's a reference like 1 out of 1,000 people get.
Well, every now and then I got some stuff. All right, so main characters, and not to say there's not going to be a couple others, but for the most part, this is pretty much it.
My bad.
Gregor's our main character, protagonist. The narrator is going to be third person, but you'll certainly get some insights where Gregor kind of provides what's going on in his mind. One of the things that we kind of mentioned yesterday when taking a look at the video, we know titles, metamorphosis, you have a transformation. What is a transformation that Gregor undergoes?
Bug.
He turns into what is at least commonly assumed to be a bug, because there's a whole lot of confusion or question as to what is it. But for the most part, you get the sense that it would be a bug. When the book gets published in 1915, Kafka was adamant that he did not want a bug on the cover of the book. But certainly, based on the description that there's going to be of Gregor, and there's a lot of detail imagery with it, it certainly would seem to be something within that insect quality. But monstrous bug, vermin, those are all kind of terms that get used for it. So right off the bat, I mean, you are certainly getting the main event taking place. Guy wakes up and believes that he has turned into a bug. There's going to be, why are you laughing? He thought he was having a bad day. Imagine waking up as a bug. Probably a beetle-ish, yeah. Based on the description, probably more beetle-ish. Oh, he loves to see those. See some skinny legs. Don't go into detail about it. There's no mistake. He believes he's a bug. Now, one of the questions that's going to kind of arise is how much of this is actually a physical transformation that's taking place, how much of this is mental that would be going on in his mind. Is it that he subconsciously wants to be a bug as to the way things are kind of going within his life? But Gregor is certainly going to be the main focal point that we're going to be looking at throughout. Certainly there are going to be some issues, some details within the story where there's probably going to be questions going, okay, well, how could this be, how could that be happening? The simple answer is we don't know. It's going to be a mix of reality, and it's also going to be a mix of kind of like a dream world taking place. But it's more of getting us to kind of pose specific questions, one of which those questions would probably be, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean for us to be individuals, to be people? What does it mean for us to be part of a larger group, a society, a family, some kind of organization, in order to feel connected and needed? Gregor is living just like Kafka is growing up with family, where he lives with his mother, father, and then Greta is his sister. But Gregor's certainly going to be the focal point. These will be other characters that will certainly be around throughout. You have a chief clerk who's going to play a big part in part one, which is essentially going to be the spokesman for Gregor's boss. The lodgers you're not going to come across until later on in the story. They're not going to be anywhere in part one. A lodger would simply be someone who is paying money to stay at your place. So it's kind of like being a tenant. So the lodgers are going to be outsiders, but everyone else here is going to be within the family. And so we'll take a look at some of the dynamics that exist with the mother, father, Greta, his younger sister, and Gregor, the protagonist. Mentioned to you that this story is described as being a novella. Novella literally just means it's a novel, but it's a little bit shorter. So it's longer than a short story, but it's shorter than a novel. Most folks look at a novel as being at least 100 pages, so a novella falls somewhere a little bit shorter than that. In this case, we're dealing with something that in your text is 72 pages total. All right? But still broken down into parts. So main characters, novella text. Some themes to look at, and I got 5 for you total. So there's 3 on this page, and then there's going to be 2 on the other. One of the themes, and just kind of got into this a little bit, this idea of mind versus body. So we want to track changes in both Gregor's physical appearance as well as his emotional stability. And Austin, literally just asking about, well, how can he think he's a bug? Doesn't he see himself? He does, and he sees himself as being a bug. There's going to be a lot of detail about what his stomach looks like, how he is trying to use his arms and his legs, the difficulty that he's having with that because he's trying to do simple human tasks, and those human tasks aren't necessarily so easy when you have numerous spindly little legs that you're trying to control. Doesn't say how many, it just says that he has it is never complete, it is never known for sure. I think most people who read it are going to take the stance that there's no way that anyone can ever become a bug, so this is all going to do within his dream world. It, I would say it is not a full dream sequence that he's going to be having. I'd say he is certainly convinced that he is a bug. There have been stage productions of this done before. So, Nick's lying in bed, Nick all of a sudden wakes up and thinks he's a bug. It's not that on stage that he will all of a sudden turn into have a bug costume, but he'll kind of start to contort himself as if he's no longer a human. But there'll be details, not so much in part one, more so in part two, part three, where you would go, no human could ever live this way. And so whether he's a bug or whether he's human, it's certainly some deplorable circumstances that he is under. One of the big questions that we kind of take a look at, okay, let's assume that this does not actually happen. What in the world is going on in someone's life that would make you think that you have become a bug? Now, like if every day, I demean you, Austin, you're worthless, Austin, if you bring this class on, Austin, why are you even here? You could say I'm dehumanizing you at this point. I feel like I'm on feel body something along those lines.
So I'm kind of confused because like you said
You think you're confused now?
no, this man is like this is his story. Okay, this is his story, right? So is it like him mentally before he passed, and then like you said he went through like that you know what I mean? Like he went through that time before he passed, which is his story.
When you're saying you're talking about like Kafka, like the guy.
Yeah.
Do
you think it's any relevance to that, or just before all that happened?
Yes and no. Yes to your question so far as relevance. The part that makes it kind of weird is 1912 is when he writes the Metamorphosis.
Yes.
Okay? He writes it based on dreams that he has. So he dreams this over the course of like 2 days. He tries to write it down as quickly as he can. 1915 is when he publishes it. So it's something that he's working on for those 3 years. It's not until 1917 is when he contracts tuberculosis, and then ultimately 1924 is when he passes away. So he is not bedridden, being taken care of by his family, completely sick while he's doing all this stuff. He's still working. He still has some family issues that he's working with. So I think, there's definitely going to be some connections, but it's not something where I'm bedridden, I can't get out of bed, I don't feel like a human anymore. Boy, this is just like being a trapped animal. Now I'm going to write a story about being a bug. But it's creepy in that those parallels kind of start to work out that way. Right.
Gotcha.
So changes, certainly want to look at changes that are going to be happening within at least his perceived physical appearance. And also you could explain like the physical appearance that the people around him are going to have. But certainly then the changes that are kind of happening more in the mind so far as that emotional stability, is going to be a thing that we're going to look at. And that emotional stability will probably be something that we kind of start to look at. Family structure, relationships and things like that. A lot of times within a family, I think we kind of tend to believe that the parents are going to be the one who are in charge, but certainly based on what's happening so far as money, income, making decisions, those family structures, those roles can certainly change. Not only is it going to be parents, but it's also siblings. If you have, assuming that you're not twins, I think the older sibling is the one that we kind of tend to think of as going to be the caregiver or the one who's going to be protecting the younger one. But there can certainly be some situations where that switches. Sometimes that's based on responsibility. Sometimes that's unfairly based on gender and whatnot. So that family structure is going to be a thematic thing that we look at. And also money. Whether or not we like it or not, money certainly plays a role in the way that people go about living their lives, as to how those relationships work, as to how we kind of have some emotional stability or instability. Money can be a pressure point for that, and that's certainly something that's going to be happening within the story. And again, keep in mind, you're dealing with families, a lot of times large families that are living together in close quarters, because it's just dependent upon for the money to happen. Hayden, you okay? You need to go. It looked like you had a little bit of blood on your side. Rather than using why don't you just go wipe off the back? All right. Now, last two themes, and this one certainly jot down. Intentions versus outcomes, and then sympathy, dependence, and responsibility. Intentions versus outcomes. What you want to happen versus what ultimately does happen. So he could certainly have the best of intentions, but if you cannot effectively communicate those things, that's going to certainly cause a lot of problems. So, you could certainly want something good for a person, but if you cannot communicate and get that across to them, actions that you're then doing for the best of them might be misconstrued and not understood. And then this last one, the idea of sympathy, dependency, and responsibility. Transformation of Gregor and also of family member values and roles throughout the text, how these things change. So who is responsible, who has the responsibility for others, who are those that become dependent upon them, does someone who originally had responsibility switch over to dependency, and what would be like sympathy and whatnot that could certainly take place from there. All right? So transformation, not only, and again, transformation is going to be a change, not only a physical change that would be happening for Gregor, but a change of those values, roles, and whatnot that's going to be happening throughout the text. So those are our 5 big ones that we're looking at. Intentions, outcomes, sympathy, dependence, responsibility, and then the ones that we had on the last page, and I'll come back to this one, mind versus body, family, money. We're a ways off from it, but essay-wise, as we get through this, we're going to be taking a look at what would be some symbols that help support different themes that we're identifying throughout the text. So symbolic values will certainly be something that we're looking at, and we have these 5 themes, and then we have additional themes that we'll be able to add on top of it. Don't write this down. Katie was kind of asking about Gregor character and lining up with Kafka, Franz Kafka, the writer. Are there meant to be some similarities? Whether or not he intends them to be, there certainly are. One of the things that Kafka does is he writes a 100-plus page letter to his father before he dies. He writes the letter actually while this is going on in 1914, so like onset of World War I taking place. He never gives the letter to his father, but it's something that he certainly writes, documents, and thinks about giving him. Most of the things that he's doing with his father, he's pointing out points to his father or flaws he has his father and the way that he goes about treating him. So this feeling of being nothing that often dominates me comes largely from your influence, reference to his father. I was weighted down by your mere physical presence. I was skinny, weakly, slight. You're strong, tall, broad. I felt like a miserable specimen. So having things like this where I feel like I am nothing and I'm dominated by you, skinny, weakly, slight, certainly has those elements of not feeling like you're a strong human, so that the idea of being like a little bug, a cockroach, a beetle, less than human is an idea that Kafka certainly is dealing with. And he does have feelings of inferiority, whether it's dealing with his father or whether it's sometimes dealing with other people within society as well. Your opinion was correct. Every other was always kind of mad. What was always incomprehensible to me was your total lack of feeling for the suffering and shame that you could inflict on me with your words and judgments. So the emotional feelings that certainly the character is having, it seems like this would be something that would be dominating Kafka 1912, 1913, 1914 as this writing is taking place. So yeah, there are certainly going to be some parallels between the two of them.
You can see like the pain and like how he was writing and stuff, and how like this was crazy he felt and just not like, you know what I mean?
So that's where we're going to take a look at the parallels, which is why here in a second I'm going to pass out the diary entries to you, where we're going to have a little bit more of that being witnessed. One of the things is he's sets it up is his type of writing is referred to as being like expressionism or surrealism. So it has a dreamlike quality to it, but it's also very symbolic in nature with characters, and there's going to be a lot of exaggeration, distortion, imagery that's going to have more of a nightmarish feeling as opposed to something that we're going to think of being just, solely kind of descriptive. So when you're reading it and going, there's no way this would fit in a real world kind of situation, that's part of the style that he's trying to do. And by having that style, the idea is it gets you to kind of think about an issue differently than the way that you normally would. And so the same thing certainly kind of happens with art. Vincent van Gogh with Starry Night. People look at the picture as it's something that kind of causes emotion and gets you to think about. It's not necessarily the way that when you look at a Starry Night, that's what you're going to see. Or The Scream with Edward Munch. The idea, again, that this is the feeling that it can kind of evoke. It's not meant to be an accurate, realistic depiction, and that's the same thing that's going to be happening with the way that the novella is ultimately set up. So it's going to be weird, but he wants it to be weird. So